Uh, yeah, good morning. Sorry for the little delay. Hopefully the slides work out. Thanks, Coearth Foundation. Thanks, Abid, for inviting me to Calicut. It's always wonderful to be part of a conference where there are lots of non-architects as well presenting. It gets pretty dull otherwise. Um, Thanks, Abid, for that wonderful presentation. A lot of what I want to say is in that, and Manas as well. So we've been doing, school buildings for a while now as part of our practice. And over time, just as Manas said, some of the clients who we've interacted with have brought to the table very sophisticated ideas about how they want education to be sort of, managed in these schools. And, so we've learned a lot from those engagements with clients, and the architecture comes as a result of these conversations with people who've thought very deeply about how they want to teach and how they want these environments to be. And so at the heart of it, actually, a lot of the schools are about basically just, of course, some instruction, but also enough opportunities to inquire, to linger in a way, and not to structure everything in a way. And of course, we are all big fans of Lou Khan, and Khan designed IIM Ahmedabad, and, he says this wonderful thing about the man under the tree. But what's, of course, we have in our own sort of, great stories, the idea of someone sitting under a tree and exchanging their realizations. But what's nice about the quote is that he also makes it a point to say that the teacher doesn't know that they're the teacher, and the students don't know they're students, and it's just a bunch of friends sitting around shooting the breeze, if you will, and sometimes, and we all know that in architecture school at least, that this casual engagement with friends in a comfortable environment under the tree gives us the opportunity to really learn, that it sort of gives you a chance to introspect, to think back at what happened in class, perhaps, but that this environment, that the school really is the making of an environment that allows that kind of free and non-hierarchical exchange. Also, this wonderful sketch by Richard Laplastria, the great Australian architect, he made this amazing journey when he was in his 30s across India and stopped at Ellora and made this beautiful drawing of one of the caves in Ellora. And he says that in drawing the plan and section of this building, he kind of realized the metaphor behind this place of learning, that the young initiates, back please. Can you go back, please? Yeah, so the young initiates who come into the order, they come down at that lowest level, they come through those gates, and they're in this chamber where the Buddha is set deep into the hill. So there's no perspective, you don't have any prospect out, and there's very little light on the Buddha. And as you made your way up in the order and you came up to the top of that section, you now had prospect, you had perspective, and now there was light, a little bit of light on the Buddha, that the section and plan of this building somehow encapsulated the sort of idea of someone maturing as they learn. And so for me, for us in the office, over the long period of time that we worked on projects, educational projects, that they're rooted on the idea of these two things. On the one hand, it's the idea of designing a kind of liminal space, the space between things, the thresholds, the stuff that's outside of the program that the clients typically give you, that really the place for possibility, as Manas said, and Anand was saying earlier as well, that's really the secret sauce, that if you did that really well, that there would be these opportunities for wonderful learning and realization. And that the plans that we make as architects, that really the plans are what Khan called a society of rooms, that you're trying to find a way, of course, to make nice rooms for instruction, but you're also trying to make them come together in a way that it sort of enhanced this idea that it would foster human interaction, and that these would encourage circulation, and that they would be places of really wonderful chance encounters. And so this lovely, this is the word yume in Japanese, and it basically means dream. But really, when the calligrapher is making those strokes on paper, it's not really the black lines that matter, at least this is what the great calligraphers say, that they're trying to find the space between it, They're trying to create, and so the stroke on the paper encapsulates both those things, this idea of indeterminate space that then, is between things, and the shape of it coming together to mean something. That's at the heart of what a school is. And just a brief comment about, my favorite building, this building in Bangalore called IIM Bangalore. It's the building designed by Doshi and Vastu Shilpa Consultants. This is a building this is a photo of the building when I was in college. This is from the 1990s. It's almost devoid of any of the landscape that completely occludes the building now. You don't really see it anymore. But it's an amazing construct of this idea of the in-between space, the space of great, of loitering, of lingering, and of chance encounter. Next. And Doshi often talks about this idea that maybe, this is all coming from his trips to Madurai, that these great temple colonnades, where again, these colonnades are all kind of that liminal space, that threshold between what is the profane world and the sacred interior of the Garbhagriha, that those circulation spines and those in-between spaces have profound meaning in that transition from the material world to this sacred shrine. Next. And so Doshi is trying to create, or at least he's thinking about this institution as this frame that holds all of the program together but has incredible quality, of differing scales, of different qualities of light, and it has these opportunities for the shy ones in terms of scale, but also for the gregarious ones that are places for performance and activity. Next. And so this idea of liminal space, that image on the left is just as you enter the building, it's just an amazing corridor that you come into, which is neither inside nor outside. It's got this strange quality of light. It's got a certain sense of darkness that it evokes all of those ancient memories you have in some of these great temples of the past, or great fortresses or mausoleums, that there's this kind of play of light and shade that gives you a sense that you're in indeterminate space. Next. And just keep going. These are some pictures Bharat Ramamritam took of the IIM Institute, but it just gives you the quality of this in-between space. Next. 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 And so if you look at the plan of the Management Institute, it's predicated on this yellow, frame. And that frame are all of these beautiful corridors of different scales, different qualities of light, some of them completely filled in with landscape, that they're really amazing places to inhabit. Next. Next. Keep going. And then as time has gone by, different architects have added different things to that spine. And so for me, in a way, it's a metaphor of education itself, that this frame, which is never changing, that is constant and is there always, giving character and rekindling memory, that this frame is what roots that campus, and then onto that frame, as we grow and mature, that we're adding new truths and new values and new realizations through this never-changing sort of underpinning that is that wonderful circulation spine at IIM. So in a way, that's a profound and wonderful sort of reading of this idea of the IIM Institute that that Vastu Shilpa came to the table with. Next. We've done a whole bunch of these institutions. We started our careers with this building in Trichy. It's a small orphanage which we built with an NGO in Trichy, built out of the local earth, using bolts, etc., to save money, also to deal with the heat. But this building is also predicated on that quality of what's between all of these different things: classrooms, vocational training, the big hall. That really the possibility, the in-between space is what is of value. Next. And so a lot of these buildings, this is after the tsunami in 2004, that these are buildings that were all built for the tsunami relief, but they're predicated on the idea of community, that the village itself sort of opens up to these buildings to use them not only as a school, but as other things in the evenings and after school hours. Keep going. So this is Tarangamadi, Chinnakudi, Pudupatnam, all of these places that were hit by the tsunami. Next. Next. And these were all built for very, very little money, but again, with generous enough open spaces between things that were covered and sheltered for the kids to use. And of course, we had amazing collaborators on these projects. The person on the bottom left is Manimaran, wonderful contractor who actually built most of these buildings. He's no more, but just the most amazing. To have that person as your first contractor starting a career was an incredible learning. And on top of him are Samuel and Liz, who the night after the tsunami went to Tarangambadi, just uprooting their lives with their 2 little children. I mean, just inspirational people. And they still live in Chinnakudi, in Tarangambadi, still looking after that school that we built together there with these amazing people. Next. Also, this idea of in-between space is something that has predicated a lot of our public work as well. So this is the Bangalore International Center in Bangalore, and this is a drawing that Divyang made during COVID. We thought BIC opened in 2019, COVID hit in 2020, and we thought that it would never be used, that it would be just that 1 year that we would have had all those people in there. And so Divyang made this wistful drawing of a building filled with people, people meeting friends, people attending a concert in the hall or a panel discussion or whatever, the restaurant full of people. And we were just, dreaming that this would be possible. But it really, the life of the building is in between all of those things, that big swath of public space that's in the building that has various scales and quality. Next, please. And it has, just like the IIM, institute, that it's got all of these variations in terms of how you hold people within a building in public space. Next. And so that quality of that cascading section and the way that light comes in. Next. Its integration with the landscape. Varnad Dhar did the landscape here, but this idea that there were these seamless connections from the inside of the building to the outside. Next. And that you were in some sense in indeterminate space, that it wasn't really programmed, there wasn't really any label on it, it was just space that you moved through, and of course the BIC has appropriated it in so many ways to use it for activities and book readings and all kinds of things. Next. And so for us, when we typically get from a client a list like this that tells us we need 25 classrooms, et cetera, a library and whatever else, and they sometimes benignly put, a 30% calculation for circulation. Really for us, that's the heart of the project, to think about what that in-between stuff is that holds all of these things together and has meaning. Next. So this is, there are a few projects and they're kind of in scale, so from the smallest to the largest ones. And so this is a very, very small, recording studio that we did for Thermal and a Quarter. They're a local Bangalore rock band. And so Bruce Lee, Mani and Rajiv, they came to the office and they said, can you do this recording studio? And the next time we met them, I took that plan back one. I took this plan to them, and of course Bruce and Rajiv looked at each other and they said, this doesn't work for us because all these rooms have, echoes and they have, these creeping reverb that comes from the corners, etc., and we can't really use them. And as Bruce was explaining to me, Acoustics 101, in the meeting, I started sort of doodling, trying to figure out ways to create these non-focal sort of spaces that had indeterminate sort of central focus. And the next day in the morning, I had this plan, and by making this plan that addressed their acoustics, it created all of this other space around these blobs that then, in fact, Thermal and a Quarter started an academy in this recording studio and started teaching kids to play the piano or to play or, to learn an instrument in these interstitial, in a room that's hardly 1,600 square feet. They were doing both recording their music, but also having all of these other things going on. And this came as a result of this, guidance from the client. Next. And soon we had a plan which, we encased these recording studios in brick, acoustically isolated from the building, and they play very, very heavy music, but they've recorded 4 albums in those rooms. Next. Yeah. So these are some pictures of that in-between space, and next. And of course, we got a mention in one of the liner notes of one of the albums, and it's the biggest pride that we have here. We're very proud of that thing. Next. And so a bunch of schools. This is Prayag Montessori School, very, very tight urban site. It's leased from the landlord, and so the building is built to max out on the FSI, but inside again to carve out spaces that have a certain quality. keeping the outer shell so that later on when the school's gone, the landlords can use it again for commercial uses and maybe change the way the insides work. Next. And so from the outside, it's got this really tight urban sort of condition. Next. But inside, it's playful and has all of these volumes and quality of light, etc., that it's really sort of surprising as you make that transition from the outside into the building. Next. And it connects to the setbacks in the gardens. Next. And then on the upper floors, we created this kind of 3-foot datum outside, which carried planters and had places to sit outside. And so though you're in the city in a very tight site, you always have gardens around you on all levels. Next. This is Neve Academy we did with Kavita Gupta. One of the most sophisticated clients we've had. And Kavita came to us with she'd moved from Singapore and had shopped around for schools for her little children and found that none of the schools were really matching her ideas of what education should be. And so she did the next obvious thing. She started her own school. But nonetheless, the thing is that she'd written all this stuff out about what she thought a school should be, what kind of environment it should be. And of course, we very quickly drew it up thinking that, we figured it out, we'll make a corridor, we'll put the classrooms on the edge and create a nice big garden in the front. Next. And then Charles Correa, the great Indian architect, visited the office, and this magazine had just come out and it was lying on my table, and it had this essay on the mat building. The mat building is an idea that, that basically says that, the plan is like a mat. It has circulation and services arranged in some sort of a frame, just like IIM Bangalore, and then onto that frame are all of these programs. And the frame allows you so much flexibility in the way that it works. And I got thinking about it. We'd already made a lot of progress on the other scheme, but I told Kavita that I think we may have to rethink. And of course, I looked at all of the examples. That's a great free open university, and it sort of is predicated on this idea of a framework on which then are plugged in all of these programs, again, just like IIM Bangalore. Next. And soon enough, in a couple of days, I had drawn up a new plan and very tentatively went to Kavita saying that, I think this will be a lot better. And in a way, it's keeping with what you were saying, which is a lot of the instruction, 50% of the instruction happens outside of classroom environment. And so this kind of a kind of benign frame will allow us a lot of room for kids to do stuff outside of classrooms. Next. And so we thought of it as if you look at the section on the left, it's got this kind of articulated section, and it's got this datum, a kind of parasol roof that protects it. And in Bangalore, we're very fortunate that just by giving shade, you're able to get a very, very comfortable environment almost through the year. Next. And so we had this plan drawn up, and the plan really is, this is the ground floor. You can see that a lot of the stuff, there are only 6 classrooms on the ground floor and an art room. Everything else is all open, and it's places for art, for ping pong, for dining, for yoga. That these 3 classrooms have their own clusters. They're in clusters, and they open to public, to their small courtyards on the peripheries, whereas the center sort of part of the school is this kind of covered, unlabeled, free space that the kids use for all kinds of things. Next. And so that's the plan. You can see the 3 classrooms on the 2 sides, the first standard and second standard classrooms, which are opening out onto yards that then they do little farming and activities outside the classrooms. The center of the plan is a fairly large open space, which is double height, and the library opens out onto that and onto the rear yard. And so the library is kind of a breezeway across these 2 parts of the plan. And everything that's profane, the administration, or not profane, but the stuff that's not really for instruction and for learning, where the parents come to engage with the teachers, etc., is all across that water threshold. And so the building makes that transition between what is the outside world and the sacred world of the school that's inside, crossing metaphorically this sort of moat. Next. And so it's predicated on a very simple grid, which is organized on the size of that classroom. But after that, it's just a game of how you organize it to create spaces that then can accommodate kids. Next. And on the upper floors too. Next, please. Next. Yeah, they also open out onto yards, onto central spaces, etc., overlooking spaces down below. Next. And so you can see the ground floor plan on the left, the first floor massing, and then this parasol roof that hovers over everything. Next. and some sketches of that space and what it's like. Next. And some photographs. Next. So you arrive at this building facing that long sort of veranda, which looks out onto the main play fields. And it's got this roof that sort of hovers over everything. Next. Next. And that's the moat, the sort of water channel that has terrapins and, you know, a lot of planting. And then you cross over that into, next, into that space which has, I mean, it's free for them. This space is used usually by the art room for a lot of their art activities under this, but it's all covered with that benign roof, with that shade roof. And so it's always protected even in the rains. Next. And you can see that there's a lot of variation in terms of the scale and the kind of quality of light, that there are places for all kinds of kids to engage and feel comfortable. Next. 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 And they do a lot of farming on the roof, etc. And this is one of the setups in that common area. But yeah, she uses it in ingenious ways. Next. So there's some farming on the roof where they grow stuff. The kids get up there. This is another school in Bangalore called IRA Academy. Next. And it's again, I mean, predicated on this quality of the in-between space, of its quality and its variation. Next. Next. And that scale, you know, and how you articulate places for congregation and for people to come together. Next. And so here are some plans. I'll just run through this very quickly. But like Abid showed you, you know, the Hertzberger plan, that really it's that yellow stuff that is really the focus of the building. That how do you articulate that? How do you have fun with it? And how do you create places of chance encounter and inhabitation? Next. Next. And so this drawing basically telling you about the quality of that in-between space between the classrooms, that it's bringing light down to the lowest level of that building. Also, what this section tells you is that all of this air, there's the light, the glass above kind of heats up the air that gets exhausted out on the right side on the topmost floor. And so there's always a nice inducted sort of, you know, breeze within the building thanks to this kind of heating and circulation from drawing from below and exiting out at the top. That's the amphitheater on the left-hand side, and again, that same section looking the other way, and this transition out to the outside. Keep going. Next, 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 next. And so the building is a concrete frame, but it's with stabilized mud block, and that's earth that we found from the site, which we pressed and made most of the masonry with. Santosh of Threefold Design did the landscape. Next. Next. And so that's the quality of that in-between space, you know, naturally lit, naturally ventilated, but of all kinds of scale and quality for children to enjoy. Next. Next. And so these are drawings, again, the building had just about finished in 2019. COVID hit and we stopped construction. And these are drawings we made during COVID again. We were all so wistful and wondering what's going to happen next. Are there going to be schools even? And so we made another drawing where we populated it with all of my children's favorite cartoon characters, that maybe someday it'll be full of children again, you know, that it would have this life again next. But of course now it's a thriving school. We've added a lot to it, and Amita, who is our client, uses it in wonderful ways. And it's always great to go there during the break where the kids are always all out. And you have all of these transparencies that you connect, these adjacencies that you're linking and seeing other kids in other parts of the school all the time. And these sectional connections mean a lot in a school. Next. Next. Keep going, yeah. Yeah, and the classrooms themselves have this, there is a place for instruction at the top, which is kind of traditional. It's got chairs and a screen and all that. But a large part of the classrooms are these kind of Montessori classrooms where there is a lot of activity with building blocks. And so there's this kind of volumetric, you know, condition for the classes with this mezzanine that overlooks the activity area. And really the heart of the classroom is that space down below. This is the Indian Institute of Science. It's an academic building with classrooms and laboratories. We've just about completed it. Again, the same idea for the fifth time, but how do you bring together these learners in an environment that has certain quality? We had lots of trees on that site, and so the building has this very convoluted shape to accommodate these large trees that were on the Indian Institute of Sciences campus. Next. And so just a series of plans showing you the floors one after the other. Next. 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 And it's a steel building with a concrete core, and so it's got a very gentle aspect onto the street. It has micro piles and smaller footprints for the foundations to protect the trees again. Next. Next. Yeah, so these are some pictures of the outside environment with terraces, and the building sort of steps back to accommodate the canopy of the trees, etc. And you enter under that oculus with that large overhanging cantilevered parasol. Next. Yeah, keep going. Next. But the inside is really, what is important for us. And so again, like Ira, a lovely light-filled interior environment, but with sufficient variation in terms of the quality of light, so that there are darker places and brighter spaces within. Next. And so that section is really what organizes the plan. And so, these drawings which tell you about what are those places where people are going to meet and hang out. Next. Yeah, so these are some pictures of that environment. Next. Next. Yeah, and you can see, if you go back one, you can see, the way that light falls on the concrete, etc. Or next. And also this connection, it's a completely climate-controlled building, so it's got two-stage cooling, ventilation in the common areas, and radiant cooling in the laboratories. And so it is a pressurized building because of the kinds of things that they do there in terms of using gases, etc. And so, though it's sealed and tight, it has these connections out to the landscape, through these glass surfaces. And of course to the sky as well, that you have natural light and that environment inside. Next. Next. And I'll end with this. This is the Nalanda University campus. We entered a competition with Allies and Morrison, a British architect. We didn't win the competition, but it's a project that's very close to our heart. We really respect Allies and Morrison, and they really drove this, articulating so many essential things. We did this in 2014, and it's stayed with us as a lesson in how one thinks about architecture. It's very close to the Nalanda ruins. I don't know if any of you have been there, but there are these amazing brick enclosures, cloisters around courtyards with these temples on the other side. And they're really, in a way, orthogonal, almost prototypical, these rectangular blocks that are made out of brick. Keep going. Keep going. And they have immense power. I mean, they remind one of what Utzon, John Utzon, the Sydney Opera House architect, talks about, that in that landscape where it's completely full of trees, the moment you come up next to the top of these mounds, you feel liberated, as if you're in control of your destiny. Suddenly you can see the horizon. It gives you this sense of immense power. Next. But what we found most interesting, Graham Morrison and I, when we visited, is the fact that the in-between stuff, the stuff that's in between these massive blocks, was of equal, quality, that they had an amazing way to viscerally move you. That slight shifts and slight changes in topography gave you these senses of incredible habitation, that they were really profound and wonderful places to be in. So that's the site, around 400 acres, and it's absolutely flat. It catches a lot of the water that comes off of the Rajgir Hills. Next. And so really we were looking at it as a way to make a kind of, a city, mixed use, dense, and it had this kind of urban ambition, that it wasn't a campus in a traditional sense. And so we were thinking that the campus may start from the crossroads, from the railway station to the villages and connecting other villages, that at that crossroads would be where the library would sit and where the center of campus would be, that there was this asymmetrical condition on the campus. You had views out to the hill on one end, you had the highway on the top, and so there was this kind of more cloistered condition along the highway and a more open receiving condition also to receive all of that flood water and hold that as the rains receded. And the third one was this idea of a module, that the campus had so many things that had to be accommodated, and there were 7 schools, that we took all of the program, made it a 7th. So if there were 21 houses, there would be 3 in each of these modules, etc. And so that gave us the size of the urban unit. One school with its attending program organized across these 500 acres. Next. So complex open spaces and simple buildings, again, the idea of the in-between, and a density in Bihar, I mean, to have this really close-knit campus that was always in shade and comfortable to use. Also that the campus, since it was a long plan, that there were these 2 nodes in the campus, maybe one oriented around the museum and meditation hall, and the other around the dining and the library building, that there was this spine that connected these 2 nodes on campus. Next. And the last idea was the idea of some kind of a center to campus that had certain, power and quality made out of brick. Next. Just keep going through these drawings. So these are just some drawings, again, articulating what that in-between space is. Next. These are Kiran Kumar's drawings, wonderful architect from Mysore who collaborated with us. These amazing, powerful drawings of what that in-between space is like. Next. And that at moments in that spine, you would have views out to the hills, that on the south side where the hills are, you'd be able to look out and catch the range while you were in this very, very articulated in-between. Next. And so this is the first phase of the campus with the library and the dining and some classrooms and the admin. Next. And then the full build out of that campus across this spine that connected these 2 nodes with the roads feeding it from the top, opening out. Next. And like, this wonderful image that Graham talks about, that look at that image and look at the violinist, in white, that there are these special moments in that plan. Next. And these special moments were those schools that dotted this fabric. So there was this kind of fabric on the campus, and there were these special moments that were the schools. Next. Next. The classroom blocks and these special buildings, the meditation, dining, etc. Next. And so that's the library building. Next. Next. This is the dining block, these heroic brick vaults. Next. 8 meters apart. And then a kind of family of buildings. So once we designed all the buildings, positioning them on the campus. So these are prototypical, simple buildings that then were organized in a way to give us very, very articulated and complex open spaces between them. Next. Keep going. Next. This is some of the housing. Next. Next. Yeah, so you can see, the quality of that environment, that spine with the library at the end, with the towers, and the dining on the left, the meditation hall, the museum, etc. Next. And just the quality of that environment. There's the dining at the end with the hills at the back, with the library on the left. Next. Next. Yeah. And so to come back to this program, and to think about circulation again and say, next, that really it's not circulation, but these are those thresholds, places to meet friends, or, places to have chance encounters, maybe, to contemplate, but also in a way like IIM does, to lift you, to give you this heightened experience of being alive. Just as Manas said at the end, this idea of a space that gives you a profound sort of resonance. Next. And since it's an education, conference, I thought I must remember my teachers, Anil Dubey, who taught me how to draw, Fred and Julian, who were these teachers of mine at MIT. They taught me how to look at cities as a repository for architecture. Graham, who I spoke about on Nalanda, who really continues to be a mentor. The Glenn Murcutt Group in Australia. Next. And of course, Doshi, who I worked with, and that's my brother Prem. Someone who, not only through architecture, but also just in the way of his being, instructed us in ways, that we should conduct ourselves. Next. And that's our team from Hundredhands. I stand here thanks to all of them, so thanks for having me.